Now we're talking about Mill, who's going to go to the other side and talk just about consequences and outcomes in his moral analysis, and he'll talk about intent, but it's secondary to his approach. Right, the primary adjudicator of a matter is the consequences. The consequences are defined in terms of happiness, but he's not going to equate happiness and pleasure. Right, happiness is something distinct and separate. So I like to use the word contentment, right, instead of happiness, as happiness tends to pull the mind towards these immediate pleasures, intense pleasures and stuff like that. And that's not what he's talking about when he talks about, right, happiness. He's talking about a fully developed life, developing your potential, intellectual aspects, right, artistic aspects, this kind of stuff, right, not just, sitting around with a cord in your head, right, getting high on stimulating your pleasure circuits. There's a little book about that called Ring World. They were called circuit heads or something. You just plug yourself in and all your senses would stimulate, your pleasure senses would go crazy, right? That was not what Mill's talking about. That's not the high life. That's not the good life. A better life can be found, right, by developing your potential, right? Right, so when you come to any given action, right, you want to look at what produces the greatest amount of happiness or the least amount of pain, or take both these things together and find out if we subtract the happiness generated by this action and the pain generated by it, we can come to, right, the highest amount of either net happiness or the lowest amount of net unhappiness, right? But that's what we're trying to maximize in our calculus. And you can say, well, that's really complicated. It can take forever, right, to look at the possible consequences of any given action. And Mill's got a very good answer to this, right? He says the human history, right, we've had a long time to work out some real basic rules of how we're supposed to get along, right? So we don't have to, as it were, look it up every time, right, figure it out every time we try to make an action. Should we steal something? No. Should we lie? No. It's pretty easy, right, to come back to this stuff. There may be occasional circumstances where you've got to do a little bit of calculus, right, you got to put together, but he doesn't think it's going to be that often, right? He compares objecting to utilitarianism, that there's not enough time to calculate consequences of an action, to saying there's not enough time to reread the Old and New Testaments, right, when you want to make an action and be a Christian. No, there's plenty of time. You've done it before, right? Are these new old rules in application? If they are, you know what to do in the situation. If, however, you got a situation that is not covered by the old proverbs and maxims, the old ways of thinking about stuff, then you start really thinking about it anew, right? It's possible, right, in a given situation, has to be thought about anew. But most of these things we covered in the previous human histories, right? You got a very good case, for instance, in what was it, the Revolutionary France, where you had the guillotine cutting off heads, and they were getting 3 or 4 people behind closed doors and accusing somebody, right, of a crime, and therefore they'd be found guilty and executed. Well, no, you have a right to face your, right, accusers in open court and give explanations of why their motives, right, might be tainted. So those are things you make movements towards. And we've learned that, right, that kind of justice is not justice at all. Indeed, Robespierre, the founder of the whole darn thing, ends up getting killed by the same process. So, right, trials in absentia behind closed doors are not how we want to do things. Right, and this is very common reasoning, right, in public policy or in matters of war. Right, it's not uncommon that you have to sacrifice 10 to save 100. And you'll find these decisions made, right, all the time, right, in warfare. It's unfortunate that it comes to that, where you've got to give up 1 to save 6. But folks, there's really no other possible reasoning involved. You're just going to lose 6 people the other way. Right, a very good contemporary example of this is artificial intelligence in cars. If the car is going to be an accident and it cannot stop itself from being an accident, right, then the question becomes, I can go left, I can go right, I can go straight. What would be the possible potential casualties in each one of these, and then try to pick the one that has the least amount of property damage, least amount of human damage, everything. Put it all together, I guess. We try to evaluate these things. The highway department used to put a price tag on human life when they were trying to calculate for new roads. I think it used to be like 2.9 million people. So we'd make an improvement to a curve or whatnot if it would save more than, right, 1 life a year, or $2.9 million. You'd vary how much an improvement's going to cost versus how many lives it's going to save. So this is common reasoning. It's kind of scary reasoning, right? You always want to pop the value of human life higher and higher when it comes to property, but it's still something that is taken into consideration, whether it should be or not, perhaps, right? All right. Yeah, all right, back to that not equipping pleasure and happiness. So this is not what he's talking about, right? For him, of happiness is a function of a varied life, lots of experiences, right? Friends, family, right? Experiencing the whole panoply of things humans can do, not, like I said, sitting around, right, with a electric circuit in your head, right, thinking you're on top of the world. You may be thinking you're on top of the world, but with Mill, you're living a poor, very substitute. So we're not talking about extreme pleasure, right? We're not talking about hedonism here. Mill is not a hedonist, right? And so he does distinguish from, what he distinguishes what he calls the competent judge's standard. Right, so there are what he calls qualities of pleasures. So you can have drinking in the tavern, or you can have studying philosophy. Right, for Mill's going to say the higher quality pleasure, right, the better one to select is studying philosophy than drinking in the tavern. Right, and the way you determine that is by you get people that have done both. And I've drank in taverns, and I've studied philosophy, and I agree, right? You spend better time is spent studying philosophy than drinking in a tavern. So you get together a number of people who have gone through both pleasures and ask them which is better, and they can give you an idea of it. So there's a way to go through this, but that's founded upon the world, empirical advice, taking a look, very, very different from Kant's, right? Just purely intent focus on how we're going to do ethics. Right, and Mill can make very good sense then of why study or sport is better than a life in a tavern, right? And he also has a way of dealing, right, somewhat concretely with ethical decisions, right? We're going to have this, we're going to have that, right? This is more happiness, this is less pain, therefore we should go with that. So it is a final standard which you can get down to and say, okay, this is exactly the reasons why we're going to do that. So it's nice to boil it out. I like to mix these all guys up. I like to use Aristotle, Kant, and Mill. I think it's a much more powerful analysis if you take a look at each situation in terms of that, and also the contract theories we talked about earlier as well. You put all those together, right, and if all four theories say something is bad, then it probably is. If all four theories say something is okay, then it probably is. When they disagree, a different matter. But that's the idea, folks. I like to use these in combination and see what the outcomes would be, or the results of the, not outcomes, to see the results of the application of these processes, virtue, right, intent, and outcomes, and contract theory to any given situation that you think needs to be ethically analyzed. And you can come back with some pretty good answers from this stuff. It's an effective way of starting to solve some problems. Doesn't mean you get the right answer every time, but it's certainly better than not thinking about it, right, or thinking about it with poorer guides, right. These people are pretty good, right. So consider the following example, right. The combination of property. To make the matter simple, we put three options, just three, or more than that obviously, but we'll just use three. The basic idea is which option to pursue when confronted with a piece of property blocking the construction of a new highway that would solve a great many traffic problems and their intended risks. Right, so you got a farm, right, outside the city, got a city's growing, pushing on the boundaries of it, and you want to start cannibalizing part of the farm, right, take it away from the rancher who's been working there maybe his entire life, his family's been living there. So there's considerable damage and harm is going to be done. You just can't just, all right, I take it away from the fella, right, it doesn't seem very nice or good social policy. So there's real harm's going to be done, right, by condemning these family farms. So what should we do? How are we going to think about these? Well, for a way to come at this and make a very good example about Mill's thought as well, let's look at the three basic options, right? Don't condemn the property, right, and leave 10,000 people drive an extra hour to work each day, and heavy traffic increases the chances of accidents, right, many folds. You're going to have some traffic, you're going to have people get hurt, right, maybe some people die each year. You're trying to go around, right, see, it's a long farm, right, something like this, right, and so you got difficulties there. B, right, condemn the property and put down the highway after paying market value for the property. So you'll just grab it and say your house is worth $150,000, $150,000, and we're going to take it. Right, well, that seems to be better than getting people killed, but there's another option, right, we can look at, and as Mill says, we got to take the best of the options, not just one, right, say B is better than A, right, but C is better than B. Therefore, the ethical decision is C, not B, right, even though B is preferable to A, C is preferable to B, and therefore C should be selected. And C is condemn the property and put down the highway after paying far above the fair market value for the property, 10, 20 times the actual value of the property. So you make property seizing, right, undesirable unless you really need it. You're not just going to do it, right, to make a profit real quick, right, to condemn somebody's property, turn around, turn it into a convenience store and do things like that, which is what happens a lot of times, these zoning rules. Right, so this is something we can come at with and analyze this way and say, yeah, okay, we can have this eminent domain, right, where you condemn property, but if you're going to do it, it's going to cost you a whole lot. Right, societies be willing to pay that because they've got 10,000 people losing an hour a day in accidents. They'll be willing to pay, right. 10,000 people can pay all kinds of money, right, you get that together, right, versus gas savings, all kinds of stuff. Right, that makes more sense, I think, of the situation, and therefore doesn't make the condemnation of property a regular thing of public policy. Right, it's an instance of last resort of when you get into, well, got to, as opposed to, well, I want to, right? And, okay, we just talked about that. B seems better than A, but C is the best, and hence the ethical action, as Mill will talk about, right, not just doing B. And that's it. Thank you very much, folks.